I will always remember the day I was sitting in the dark theater of my school, watching a movie being played on the screen. It introduced me to the organization of Invisible Children and how 3 teenage kids can change the world. From the moment I saw the movie, I knew I would do something just like them someday. Well, here I am. Hi, my name is Brooke Kaplan, and I'm a 14-year-old freshman at the Emory Weiner School. The inspiration for my talk came from fate. It just so happens that at the same time our student body was learning about the organization of Invisible Children, I was in the middle of an 8th grade history project about AIDS in Zimbabwe.
They're called the Invisible Children, and tonight some young Americans are trying to make sure you see them. After nearly 20 years of civil war in Uganda, the United Nations estimates there are currently 1.2 million people displaced in that country. Now a group of filmmakers is hoping their story will inspire a new generation of Americans to take action.
In 2003, 3 of us boys from California went to Africa with a camera. We ended up in northern Uganda, where we witnessed incredible horror and heartbreaking suffering, especially among the children. We made a rough cut film about our experience called Invisible Children. It tells the story of night commuters, children who walk many miles every night to avoid abduction from a rebel leader, Joseph Kony. For 22 years, he has terrorized the community with his army of children, abducted and brutally forced to become soldiers. Because of this senseless war, the people were forced into displacement camps, where they are plagued by horrible conditions. There are no jobs and children can't go to school. When people saw the film, they were both shocked and inspired to help. We were amazed by the overwhelming compassion of our generation to help kids their age across the globe. We started a
Invisible Children is an organization that prevents the kidnapping of children into the LRA, or Lord's Renaissance Army, led by Joseph Kony. They showed me how an individual idea can be developed and applied to save innocent lives. My interest in AIDS started last December on AIDS Day. I didn't even know what AIDS was. A few months later, I was assigned a history project in Africa and decided to research AIDS in Zimbabwe to learn more about the disease. As I began to research, I wanted to help these poor people who were uneducated, could not afford proper health care, and were uncared for, especially by their government. Soon after, I decided I wanted to change the world, and of course, stop the AIDS epidemic in Zimbabwe. The organization I made up was FAID, or Fade AIDS in Zimbabwe. Soon after, my history teacher told the whole school about TEDx, and I thought this would be a great way to start off my ambitions. As summer came to a close, I started to have meetings with my teacher advisors. After a couple meetings, I figured out that the best way to go about this was to raise a bunch of money and then in 4 years go to Zimbabwe and build a medical center, and the problem would be solved. I even thought I could get Angelina Jolie or Magic Johnson in the picture. Boy, was I wrong. In the beginning, I was so naive about my ambitions, but as I was confronted with reality, I became dispirited. My teacher's advisors talked some sense into me, and we decided to take a few steps backwards. My next idea was partnering up with an organization called USAID, which does a bunch of work in Zimbabwe that deals with AIDS and financial help for the people. Great, now I was back on track. I found the contact number for the person in charge of the Zimbabwe mission and called her one day at school. Don't worry, I was in study hall, so I wasn't missing any valuable learning time. All I could think about was, look at me. I'm calling Washington, D.C., and I'm going to change the world. Everyone knew I would change the world because that's all I talked about. I thought that this could be it. This could make me famous. The great thing is that I found her phone number online. No problem. The bad thing is that there's nothing that I hate more than talking on the phone, but I called her anyway and got her voicemail. When I was leaving the voicemail, everything was going great, even though I was so nervous about talking to a stranger, until I gave her the wrong phone number. That's awkward. I didn't know what to do next. I ended up calling her back and told her to disregard the message, and thankfully gave her the right phone number. When I hung up, I sat and thought about how high my ambitions once were and how unrealistic they seemed. At this point, I might not even have a TEDx talk, much less save anyone across the world in Zimbabwe. But then, I remembered when Invisible Children went to Uganda for the first time and were unsuccessful. And that's when I learned my real lesson through all of this. My passion has not changed much, but I've learned a bunch about setting goals and pursuing them. When I created Fades, I was very naive. The world doesn't make it very easy for a 13-year-old girl to change it. Even though the goals we set might be realistic in our minds, there are many unforeseen obstacles in our way. But as I learned from invisible children, if you can persevere, sometimes you just might be able to overcome the obstacles of different societies. I hope to eventually go to Zimbabwe and see how AIDS is really affecting the community. With the help, hopefully, of US aid, I will be able to start off my organization, and where it will end up, no one knows. However, my ambitions are high and my belief in fate is strong. I know I will be able to create a successful organization that helps AIDS victims. I have learned that patience is key and there's a process that must be achieved. When things don't go exactly as I plan, I have to find a way to go around them to achieve my goals. Thank you and have a wonderful day.